You're listening to Dateline Latin America, Tear Gas and Tango with
Joe Goldman, 37 years with ABC News, then with UPI, with The Village Voice, and many other.
And me, Daniel Schweimler, originally from London, formerly of the BBC, 19 years, and more recently with Al Jazeera English across Latin America.
They'll be sitting at a kitchen table in Buenos Aires talking about their journalistic adventures across the region, covering earthquakes, flooding and fires, talking to presidents, charlatans, sports stars and other newsmakers. In short, journalism and the state of the world.
Welcome back. You've been travelling. Where have you been?
Yes, I went to the Pantanal, which is the largest wetlands in the world in Brazil. It touches part of Paraguay and a little bit of Bolivia as well. And it's an amazing, amazing place. Really, you're at the end of the world there with amazing wildlife. We were able to see 11 jaguars in the wild. You have capuchin monkeys. You're woken up by the howler monkeys every morning. They're the roosters of Brazil. All kinds of animals and animals, tapirs. You have anteaters. You have foxes, wolves, all kinds of beautiful birds, macaws, parakeets. And the thing about it, and we learned about this on the way, is that our guides were telling us that the indigenous in that area were known because they were fish eaters. They did not eat the animals, they didn't hunt. So the animals have lived really centuries without a fear of human beings, living alongside human beings. And you really notice that when you're there. I was stunned at how the animals just did not have fear of humans, whether we were in boats, in canoes, in walking through jungle. You would come upon animals and there would be this kind of like, hello, how you doing, guys? It was beautiful.
The devastation being caused to the environment in South America, the Amazon in particular. There's always this thing where they tell us how many football fields, are destroyed every day by these guys with the bulldozers and are burning down. I mean, is the Pantanal immune to this? Is it safe from all of this?
Well, part of the Pantanal is protected land, that's for sure, and it's very protected. I have to say thank you to Embratur, which brought a bunch of us in there to show us the Pantanal as a potential ecotourism site. They're really trying to, Embratur, which is a tremendous tourist organization of the Brazilian government, they're really trying to boost tourism in Pantanal. You do have ranchers. You have Mato Grosso, the province, has 34 million head of cattle in a province of 4 million people, but it's really in the very north of the province. And once you get about an hour outside of Cuiabá, the main city there, you have not only is there no really ranching going on, but you have almost no paved roads.
But I know is known for soya production. I've been up there before for soya production, absolutely massive. And that seems to be the case wherever resources are found, natural resources, whether it's in the production of crops, lucrative crops, cattle especially, but also mining, building dams for water projects or whatever. I mean, then these beautiful areas, the Amazon, the Pantanal, constantly under threat. So constantly
Absolutely.
to keep,
people are a bit worried in once again, the northern Pantanal, about an hour south of Cuiabá. Cuiabá, by the way, has 1 million people. So we're talking about a city that nobody's ever heard of, yet it's a city that would probably be the 12th or 13th largest city in the United States. It's a wildly growing city also. But you go an hour south and you get to the gold mines. And the town there, Poconé, according to one of the scientists who we were with, is the most polluted city in Brazil. Why? Because of mercury leaching, trying to leach the gold using mercury for years and years. People are a little worried because the price of gold has gone way up. now.
Also hitting the north of Peru as well. Again, illegal gold miners
Yes.
basically couldn't give a shit, could they, about the environment?
No.
And it's very difficult to police because these are heavily armed gangs moving into territory in the middle of nowhere. But the only resistance tends to be indigenous communities who basically end up getting shot, pushed to one side, as they always have, I think, since the first European settlers. But of course, all this will be resolved, all these issues will be resolved when the United Nations hold their climate change summit in Brazil,
Yes.
in the city of Belem, next month.
November 21st, they will have COP30, the 30th meeting. We've been to some of them, Daniel, in our work. I remember going to the first one, Eco 92, 1992, where there was something like 158 presidents. President Bush, George Bush Sr., with Collor de Mello, the then president of Brazil. Carlos Menem was the president in Argentina. And it was a 4 or 5 day meeting that was just incredible.
And all these years later, we're still discussing. I mean, I went to various COP meetings, Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The one in Belem is going to be the 30th such meeting.
I never knew what COP stood for until you just told me.
He knows I'm reading
Wow.
it. So Wikipedia.
Wow.
I've been to 4 of them, and I can't remember what it stands for. I went to Cancun in 2010. That was COP16. I would say the only good thing about it is the world is talking about an issue we need to talk about. It's probably better they're talking than they're not talking. At the same time, it is just one big talking shop. You talked about the 150 presidents who go.
Yes.
Plus their support teams, plus their environment ministers. But the time I was going to, what would it have been? COP18, I went to in Doha in 2012. Yeah, you had the presidents turning up on the final days. You had their environment ministers, you had their health ministers. You also had farmers, you had fishermen, you had women's groups, you had scientists who believed they had the answer to some of the problems. You had, people, experts on oceans, experts on rivers, experts on forests. They all have a right to be there. Climate change affects everybody. They all want to talk. We had indigenous people who had trekked from the heart of the Amazon to right across Europe to get to Doha. Remarkable stories to be told. Teenage groups, religious groups, all there talking. The trouble is that it causes a huge carbon footprint.
Yeah.
I mean, Cancun, as the mangrove swamps have been devastated by the hotels that have been there. Doha, Qatar, I think per capita probably consume more fossil fuels than almost anybody else in the world. We all turn up. The journalists as well have to be said. We're part of the problem. All turn up at these conferences, causing a huge environmental catastrophe. Yet we're talking about the environmental catastrophe that we live through. So the ironies are many, and they are talking. There's always that last minute bid to sign something. They go deep into the night, they emerge with something. But always the other people there are those who are trying to put the brakes on any kind of settlement. The people who make money out of exploiting our
Absolutely.
resources. Yeah. So Coca-Cola were there. The kind of Ford Motor Company are there. GM Motors are there because they say they want to be part of the debate. They're also trying to make sure that measures are not put in place that will stymie.
Absolutely. Fossil fuel organizations are absolutely present. One of the things I remember about Echo 92 is that really all the work done at that conference was done before the conference even happened.
Right.
The presidents are just like kind of icing on the cake. I don't know what's going to happen this year. This year we have a pretty serious situation because presidents like Javier Milei of Argentina and Mr. Trump of the United States are climate change deniers. So I don't know what their role will be. People like Viktor Orban, I don't know what their role will be in this conference. It probably will not be a good role. One of the things that people in Brazil were talking about is they had their own climate change denier, who was Bolsonaro, who was president there for 4 years. And they feel as if they're recovering from those horrendous years where basically companies and individual ranchers and gold miners, prospectors, whatever, were given carte blanche, basically, in Brazil. Laws are starting to be followed, finally. Marina Silva, who's the Minister of Medio Ambiente, Minister of the Environment, is somebody who's known as a tremendous fighter for the Amazon and for environmental rights in general.
Yeah, I mean, I went into the Amazon 2019 when Bolsonaro was in office to the state of Rondônia up in the northwest, where there were fires. I mean, there were fires raging right across the Amazon, Brazil, in Bolivia as well. And we went deep into the jungle. We had to fly to the state capital, Porto Velho, which wasn't easy, then drive for 2 or 3 hours, then take a 5 hour boat trip up one of the tributaries of the Amazon to the Caribuna indigenous people deep in the jungle. One of the elderly women we spoke to were in the late 60s, early 70s, had been part of an uncontacted tribe and then was contacted and had, relationships with the outside community after that. Her sons had grown up, with contact with the outside world. But remarkable. But again, the thing that struck me how huge, especially me coming from a small European country, can't get my head around the distances. And we were very lucky when we were there to be able to take a small plane up. To look at the fires initially, but then you can fly for hours and hours and hours, and you see nothing but green. And you think, well, you can ruin a little bit, but there's plenty more there. I think that's the mentality quite often. You can never destroy it all. Of course, we can and we are. So you go over this green and then you hit the brown bit, the bit where they have already done the deforestation, they've chopped the trees, they burnt what was left in these huge, great fires, which caused more damage. And then the brown seems to go on forever. And this is for cattle ranches, which produce a few thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions perhaps head of cattle, which serve the palates of wealthy people in Europe, in North America, in Brazil itself. But a huge amount of land is destroyed for the benefit of quite a few people, and a few people who make money out of it. But the devastation is relentless, it's endless, So if it's, you have these great bulldozers pulling these great chains across, just destroying vast amounts. And this was at a time when Bolsonaro was saying, to people who were struggling in the big cities, the poverty in Sao Paulo, in Rio, saying, go forth, multiply, the land is yours. Don't let a few indigenous whingers and moaners get in your way. And of course, who wouldn't, in their circumstances, do exactly that?
Yeah. One of the things that was really enlightening about going to the Pantanal, first of all, how pristine things were there. Outside of that 1 hour south of Cuiabá, when we hit just dirt roads and spectacular holes in those dirt roads, I got to say, my back is still feeling it, but you did not see garbage. We didn't see one can, one bottle, everything is so clean. And it points to the fact you've got a situation, and we talked with Embratur about this. What do you do when tourism comes in there? Does that change the whole pristine nature of what is the Pantanal today? I remember going to the Bolivian side of the Pantanal, and there was a lot more in the way of human waste and garbage, and there was a lot of industry. In that case, it was the iron industry in eastern Bolivia, which really impinged on the Pantanal. But it's amazing how clean things are, and you wonder if it will stay that way if there's a super surge in tourism.
I mean, was it easy for you to get there? Were you talking about dirt roads? Is there a paved road? There's no airport that can get you in there. Is that outside of Cuiabá?
There are some of the tourism, and these are obviously people with loads of money, will go in on what do you call them, seaplanes or whatever planes that will land in the river. The main river there is the Cuiabá, as well as the city. It's the river that really cuts through the area. We went with that river, alongside that river, to a place called Porto Jofre. I don't think it has 200 people who live there
Right.
regularly. It's really the Pantanal is very, very sparsely populated. Look, it's an area that really has been forgotten for so many years, and that's what makes it wonderful.
Well, keep it quiet, Joe. Don't tell
I know.
anybody because
Forget
now you
about this.
mentioned it. We're gonna
Don't go. Don't
forget.
go. Don't go.
So what happens, isn't it? I made one of my favourite places in southwestern Bolivia, Uni salt flats.
Oh yes, yes,
Beautiful with its geysers and its great flat white expanses and hotels built out of salt. And one
exactly.
of the
Yeah.
beauties of it, it was what used to be when I went there 10, 12 years ago, it was quite inaccessible. You had to take a bus from Potosi, up in the 4,000 meters above sea level. Our bus broke down on the way. We had to wait by 4 or 5 hours by the roadside. But that was the beauty of it. There was a train that took you from out of the uni once a day early in the morning, up closer to La Paz. But it was inaccessibility was what protected it. And of course, the tourist companies rant and rave about it. The wealthier people want to go there and they build an airport, and they build
Yeah.
roads. And then hotels and restaurants and cafes and gas stations start appearing by the roadside and people bring their rubbish out and it becomes an issue. So,
I'm trying to think. I don't think there's any airport between Cuiabá and Campo Grande in the very south of the Pantanal and in Mato Grosso del Sur. I don't think there's any. I may be wrong. There might be the Brazilian Air Force maybe has some kind of installation. I don't know. The other thing is, I don't remember seeing a plane in the sky.
hmm,
When you're in the Amazon, you see planes going overhead and stuff. I didn't see any. I guess it's off the route of going to Buenos Aires or going to Asuncion. I don't know. You just don't see any kind of, which is nice. No planes. The worst noise there were the howler monkeys, I guess.
right.
It's really a very special area. We went the first couple of days we were on a riverboat. I don't know if you've seen the movie Fitzcarraldo. I felt like I was in the midst of Fitzcarraldo. I was waiting for Klaus Kinski to come and start screaming or whatever. The whole life of people, first of all, there's a tremendous amount of fishing being done there. And then you go on small boats and you bump into jaguars. There was one situation where we were with three small boats in Cuiabá River, and all of a sudden we see a jaguar, and we're in the midst of the river, and the jaguar just swims across, like stopping us, but not even like worrying about, these gringos or whatever, just swimming across as if nothing. What makes the jaguars incredible is they can climb trees, they can swim, they can run so fast, and supposedly they have a stronger bite than a lion.
Wow.
So they are amazing, amazing creatures. And once again, Embra Tour, if you ever get a chance to, they're just amazing. What they set up with some of the scientists, the guides who are there, just an amazing trip.
Well, it's good to know there are still these, relatively pristine areas in South America.
Absolutely.
And I've been into other, the Ecuadorian jungle, for instance, and there's a little town on the edge of the jungle called Misawaí, which used to organise
Oh, yeah.
trips into the jungle, walking tours. You could be gone for a week or so. The trouble was, there's still indigenous, tribes living, communities living out there. There wasn't much in the way of big wildlife. We did see monkeys, but the rest has been pushed so far in. It's difficult for
Yes.
the indigenous communities to survive on hunting. I was told when I got there, look small, look under the rocks, look under the leaves. That's where you'll find your small. It's insects mostly. The rest, human habitation has been pushed so far in, and the difficulty is protecting it. You do see is a little bit of we're seeing increasingly wildlife, nature kind of impinging back on human habitation. Tiny little success stories. My favorite at the moment, which we're hoping to do a story on soon, just north of Argentina, Buenos Aires, very wealthy, affluent Nordelta area, it's called, where people live in these kind of gated, walled communities. They're kind of pincho,
Yeah.
capybara, some call them. So large rodents, very cute little, cute rodents.
Fairly large, too. Yeah.
Fur-
Jaguars love them, by the way. Yeah, they eat them all the time.
These are people who have built their own houses on these kind of lakes or whatever, up that way. Trying to get rid of them. The capybaras, the carpinchos were there first. It was their natural habitat. But now they're strolling onto the lawns and eating the flowers of these people in these wealthy houses. So they invent stories, they'll talk about them being dangerous to their pets. Diseases that might affect their children. All these stories to try to demonize them, to then justify maybe the poisoning, the sterilization of, the hunting of, who knows. But that's an interesting one about.
I would say that they're probably as concerned with the capybaras as they are with being investigated for running money out of the country.
Tax evasion.
Tax evasion, yeah.
So the communities are divided. There are those who want to live side by side, and they've developed a whole range of produce, or chillers, rucksacks, in the shape of capybaras, key rings, t-shirts, because they look quite cuddly. So you either make them cuddly or you demonize them, one or the other, depending on which side of the argument you're on. But you see that across South America.
You see, yeah, and you see a real battle going on between tourism or even ecotourism and nature. In the Ecuadorian Amazon, my old buddy Tom Larson, who he's a Nebraskan who has a slice of this beautiful, beautiful lodge in the middle of the Amazon, and really is working with the local communities on fishing, because many of the people in the local communities, you know how they fish in the Ecuadorian Amazon, dynamite. They dynamite areas, kill all the fish, and just go and pluck them out.
Right.
So he's trying to develop different ways of fish farming and doing other ways of fishing more in a natural way. But at night there, you can actually hear the dynamite going off.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's stunning.
There's work being done. People like this guy you just mentioned. When we went into Rondônia to do the forest fires, yeah, there were certainly people who were there, illegal occupiers of land, chopping down trees. But there were also people who had come from the cities or other farming regions to try to farm as best they could in a sustainable way as possible, to work with the indigenous community, to work with the authorities. It is a huge amount of land which can be farmed sustainably without destroying vast tracts of forest. But that takes more time, that takes more investment, it takes knowledge and information, which not everyone's prepared to do. It's so much easier just to go in there, chop it all down, burn it, and then start planting for your very quick return on cattle or soya planting. But there are ways of doing it. That's the kind of thing they will be looking at the COP30 in Belem, all across Latin America. They are doing that. We don't always hear about that. There are, here in Argentina, before Milei scrapped the science budget, there were some very good projects going in here, going on in Argentina.
Look at the Riachuelo, which was one of the worst polluted rivers in all of Latin America.
It used to be in the top 10 in the world, those polluted rivers.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah. I remember doing stories on the Riachuelo. It runs through a large chunk of Buenos Aires, La Boca, and I remember smelling it 5 or 6 blocks before we got there. It stank.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And they actually plucked cars, they plucked bodies, they plucked everything out of there. And it's become a lovely area. You can go now and have picnics in, for example, Villa Fiorito, the old town where Maradona was born, or in Boca, and it's really clean. It's a lovely thing to see. A lot of times you don't see this in the third world. What you see in the first world, which is like the Hudson River being cleaned up, the Lake Erie area in Cleveland being cleaned up where it used to go on fire every now and then. So there are those positive things that I think have happened in the last decades.
Yeah, it took a long time for the Riachuelo because there have been many failed projects, money disappearing, different municipalities fighting one another, not taking responsibility. Was it a city thing? Was it a local municipality thing? Was it a national issue?
Right, so and not going after the big factories.
Yeah. I did a little tour and a story once where we filmed on the river these activists took us out on their boats, and we were going past the factories which were pumping crap into the water.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we're trying to clean this river up. There's no point cleaning anything until you stop polluting. It's a fundamental issue. Stop polluting, first of all, and then we'll start cleaning. But they were having to clean. They couldn't get people to stop the polluting. And we went up the river. We filmed all the crap that was floating on the river. And there was no sun. They said there's no life in here at all. There's no plant life. There's no plants, there won't be insects. There's no insects, there won't be fish, there won't be birds. And then I saw a bubble float up from the bottom. I thought, well, there must be life down there somewhere. Bubbles don't come from nowhere. And he said it's a chemical reaction. There are certainly chemicals sitting at the bottom of the river. Every now and then things happen in the mud, and a bubble of oxygen will float up to the surface. That's as good as it got.
Wow.
And then they gave us, as a zoo, we had a picnic. We moored the boats, and this was all, it was journalists, it was a few scientists, people looking at, and politicians looking at the issue. And they got us some old empty plastic bottles. And as a souvenir, they put the bottles in the water. And it looked like, well, I think I had a Coke bottle, and it looked like Coke. And I put this bottle on my desk for many years afterwards, and it was just basically polluted water, black water,
Wow.
which they fished out of the river for us. It was spectacular, but it is good news to know. Because what's happened as well is the local community, people who live along the Riachuelo, are embracing it. They can go for walks along, they can go fishing, they take their kids, they can go running along the river, and it's pleasant, it's enjoyable. So they are now part, and they made the local community part of the fight to clean it up. They made it their river. And once they incorporated the community, then there's that much more people look after it. They don't want to see crap dumped in it. So it has been a success story, and it doesn't smell anymore.
And I think there are those kind of stories throughout. I know Chile with mining has really put in laws that are very strict and has done some really good things about where companies dump their whatever, their slag. And it's been a change in Chile. I think Peru is way behind right now. Colombia and Ecuador have done certain things to better the situation in the jungles. We'll see.
The trouble is, it's weak economies, isn't it? People are struggling financially, and the quick fix, whether it's the Vaca Muerta, the mining in Western Argentina, or whether it's oil off the coast of Guyana and Brazil, it's a quick fix.
Yeah.
The gold in Peru that we've already mentioned, and the restrictions just disappear because governments need their revenue now to pay off their debts and all the rest of it. And so it's just, we were talking about the environment, but that can wait because we need the money now.
One of the amazing things I remember doing in Neuquén, where today Vaca Muerta is one of the largest fracking deposits in the world. Back then, I was doing a story on the dinosaur bones being found. And there was this tremendous battle between the miners looking for gold, the oil and gas engineers looking for oil and gas, the indigenous who didn't want anybody on their land, and the paleontologists looking for dinosaur bones. I wonder who's winning today. I would probably guess oil and gas
no doubt about
is winning that
no,
battle.
I've been out there. Again, went out with indigenous, with the Mapuche, with slings and throwing stones at and they were right to do that. Their rights were just trampled on. They were silenced. I mean, they're angrily resistant, as they have to be. But the oil companies have got such a bad record, We've talked previously about pollution in the Ecuadorian jungle, Chevron, wasn't it? So,
Chevron, yeah.
Better record if they would say to the local population, look, we clean up after ourselves. They quite blatantly don't. So.
No, and they never paid the fine that was ordered by an Ecuadorian court. They were protected by a court in Manhattan, Southern District. And in fact, the lawyer who was representing the Ecuadorians in that case has been in jail or under house arrest for a number of years. So Stephen Donziger.
Right, yeah.
Very interesting guy.
So a few little buds of hope, maybe, but generally, well, we'll see how it comes out of the COP30 in Belem. And what are we going to talk about next? So we're going to talk about Bolivia, I believe, where there's not much, and they've got two right-wing candidates in the runoff election on Sunday. I think we'll see which one of the extreme right or the moderate right, I suppose you could call them, doesn't hold that much hope for their environment. But we'll see where that goes.
Well, we'll see where it goes, and we'll also talk about how when the left fights internecine battles,
Yeah.
you give space to the right